Hi, folks, and welcome. Welcome to Just Folks Conversations with Emma. See this big smile I have on my face today? Well, I want to tell you all a story. The story is in the last century, there were three young ladies. I'm joking. Actually, these are two of my dear friends. And the interesting story behind us is that we all attended the same high school. We graduated in 1968. And you do know that there are instances where people haven't seen each other for years and years and years, and they reconnect and they pick up where they left off. And I've always thought, oh, okay, that's kind of true up to a point. But the reality is that we actually had not seen each other for 50 solid years. When we graduated from high school in 1968, we went in different directions. And it was our 50th high school reunion where we reconnected. And now we're like three peas in a pod. So may I introduce to you two of my dearest friends on the planet, Marjorie Schenk. Wave your hand, Marjorie. And Kathy Quinn Jensen. Welcome, ladies. Hi.
Welcome. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh, and it's wonderful we can all get together. It's one of the benefits I would say about COVID is that it's opened up a whole series of possibilities for folks to reunite in ways we couldn't have done. Because I'm not sure we'd have thought about actually physically getting together as often as we have, except for the technology. So here we are.
I know we did pretty well right after the reunion. I remember the pancake breakfast.
Yeah, we did that. Yeah, we drove and met, but then you had moved across country. You were headed over to
New Mexico.
Yeah, New Mexico. Yeah.
But actually, the pancake breakfast was when I had taken the train for a visit back from New Mexico, and we got together then. So, but it's been such a joy to be friends again.
Friends again.
Yeah.
And I still wonder, what was I thinking when I was getting ready to leave high school? And I don't think I said to almost anybody, let's keep in touch. I didn't do that. I don't understand it looking back, I don't understand it. But I knew Emma was going to college in Illinois or somewhere. And I thought, well, she's going on her way. Mm-hmm. But I didn't even suggest, let's keep in touch once a year or something. Mm-hmm. Same with Kathy. I thought you were going, you were going out of state somewhere.
Well, actually, freshman year, I didn't, because although I had taken my SATs and my ACTs and did fine on them, I never actually got my application turned into any place. So I went to Catonsville Community College for my first year, and then I applied to college.
So you weren't ready to leave home yet.
No, totally, totally immature. So I stayed home that first year. But I agree with Marjorie. I didn't even think, we were just doing what came next. I guess I thought maybe we would get together at reunions, but I didn't. I never went to a reunion until the 50th. So I totally lost touch with everybody.
So that was your first reunion?
That was my first reunion. Well, on the 5th reunion, I was in Brazil. I'd gone with Partners of the Americas. On the 10th reunion, it was right at the time I was getting married. And then I think after that, I would get word about him, but my life was so disorganized and chaotic that I just never made it. So it wasn't until 50. So that was the first time I saw anybody.
Okay, how about you, Marjorie?
I went to the 5th. It was some kind of a picnic, I think, outside. Then I went to the 10th, which I don't remember anything about. Then I went to the 20th, and that was at a bar. And so we were all hanging out at a bar.
Mhm.
And by the 20th, it was really hard for me to recognize people. And I was like, I don't know who these people are.
Well, for me, the 50th was my first one. And because Kathy had communicated with me, I thought about it. And I'm also going to make a confession. I saw the pictures from the 45th, and I don't remember who was in charge of the 45th, but they had communicated with me by email, and it was like, will I, won't I, will I, won't. Nah, I don't think I will. Because the thought of a reunion made me really nervous. I said, I haven't seen anybody since we graduated, and maybe no one will remember me. But the pictures afterwards were posted somewhere on the internet. And I looked at the pictures and I thought, oh, I know who that is. That, went through all of that. And then I thought, there's not a single Black person. How dare they do that? That's awful. Well, I had not remembered up until that moment, until the 50th, that there were only 2 Black students in that class. I was one of them. And the other young lady is now deceased. So, Charlotte, yes, Charlotte Johnson. So, if I didn't show up,
yes, there was actually
You had to
Carl
represent.
Hodge. Marge, did you know Carl Hodge?
The name rings a bell.
I
But
know you came during junior year, right, Emma? Because
Yes.
Carl was still there at junior year, because that was the year that Baltimore County got football. So sophomore year, as far as I know, Charlotte and Carl were the only 2 African-American students. And then junior year, Charlotte was still there. Charlotte was always in my homeroom because she was Johnson and I was Jensen. So go figure. But but Carl played football junior year. And then, so I just knew who he was because he was on the football team. And it was a big deal because it was the first year Baltimore County Schools had a football team. But then senior year, he wasn't there. And I asked a few people and nobody knew for sure, but they thought that he wanted to go someplace else where they had a more solid football program, where it wasn't just a baby football program that was just getting started. So, and that may or may not be true. And even the person that told me that said, I think that maybe that was what happened. So there actually was one more. Anyway.
Well, but he didn't make it through to graduation. I don't.
No, definitely not. No, he was not there for senior year.
I don't recall him at all. I just remember there being, me and Charlotte. So anyway, thanks to your encouraging words, Kathy and Marjorie, I remember you very distinctly because we used to talk all the time during homeroom. And I don't know what we talked about, but we talked a lot. And it was, I think we made reference to that in the yearbook. Opened it up.
I did.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you showed that to me.
Yeah. That's what Charlotte in my yearbook talked about homeroom too, because that's really, we were in a typing class together once, but other than that, my connection with Charlotte was homeroom.
Well,
so let's hear it for homeroom.
Yeah.
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 Can I share something else? Doing this conversation today, I thought about this I looked at it, Just Folks Conversations with Emma, and that is my salient memory. And I think it was senior year, but I don't know how you 2 are, but I kind of morph years together and everything kind of gets put all together. So it could have been junior year. Were you in student council in junior year, Emma, or just senior year?
I think it was just the senior. It was definitely senior year. Yes.
Okay. So I think about it as a senior thing, but that was, I used to look forward to going into student council. And I just remember sitting next to you and we would sit together and we would have conversations. And I thought it was, so back in 1967, 1968, I had conversations with Emma.
And I did too.
Yes.
And that's what has brought us back together.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's really why I like doing this format. So I really thank you both for, taking your time and, just sitting and chatting so we can have more conversations. What projects are you working on now, ladies? What are you doing? What's your life like now?
We are trying to, we moved into a house that was built in 1900 during COVID. We got back here the day that Governor Wolf shut down the state. So.
And what state are you in?
In Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And I'm in central Pennsylvania. So I'm near Hershey. People know where Hershey is. And I'm about 10 miles from Hershey.
Oh.
So, and I'm not an amusement park person. So, but I do love chocolate. So we had come out, Bill's youngest sister was dying of cancer. And we just felt that we needed to finish our adventure in New Mexico and be back home. So not just coming in to visit, but to be here to support her and then to support especially the rest of his family, but to be with our kids more often. And so we were coming out. We got here the day the governor had shut down the state, and our agent that we had been in contact with and we had chosen a lot of houses that we wanted to see. And so she was ready to show them to us, but she called and she said, we have been told that we cannot show houses or we will lose our licenses, because it was such a strict shutdown of the state, and that the housing market was not considered essential. So we couldn't look at houses really. And we asked our agent if she could call the houses and see if people would be okay if we walked around the outside of the house on our own. And this one man called her back and said, well, I'm a little absent-minded. I guess if I happen to leave the house on Sunday morning and forgot to lock it, I guess somebody could probably just walk in. And so that's how we saw the house. We walked in by ourselves to an unlocked house. And it's an old house. And we had it inspected, and he acknowledged there were some issues. And so our project right now, we've been here for a year and a few weeks, is we're trying to make this old 1900 house home. And there's still a lot of work. So that's what we're doing.
Well, that's certainly going to keep you out of trouble for a while. Okay. And how about you, Kathy? Marjorie, what are you engaged in right now?
Well, exploring relationships with the new people.
Okay.
Having been single, joining groups, meeting new people, see what will happen with that. Also working on writing a little bit more. There's a little voice in my head that says poetry and art. So those two things are on my mind, and I have started to, as I write, go inward, and that's where the poems are coming from at the moment. And I'm just touching on it actually right now, but it fulfills me so much. So that's going on. And also another thing is trying to speak up more in groups.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm very shy, and I'm doing it. So that's the main thing. I'm doing it, and practice makes better. So.
Well,
so we say practice makes progress. That's our new motto. Practice makes progress.
Oh, I like that.
That's a good description. Yes.
That is excellent.
Marjorie, I remember your being very shy when I knew you, when I met you in seventh and 8th grade. But I don't think we were in the same class in 8th grade. You took French, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was Spanish. And so they divided us up.
Yeah.
But we still knew each other. And that's when, and I have just loved getting to know you since the reunion, because you've totally blossomed, I think. I
Oh.
mean, you always have had
Oh,
many
dear.
things to offer.
We lost your connection for a second. Go ahead.
You're really offering them. So I just think that Marjorie has absolutely blossomed since those first days in 7th and 8th grade.
Oh my God.
No,
Thank you.
because you really do speak up and speak out and share what's inside. So I think it's wonderful. I want to read what you write.
Oh. Okay.
Yes, and that was going to be my next question. Do you have anything you can share with us, a poem nearby?
Well, I mean, I could read you this. Last week, the police called me and said, would they let me in? Would I let them in? So I did, and I thought, what's this about? What did I do? And they came in and they said, are you related to Victor Schenk? And I said, yes, he's my first cousin. They said, well, we're sorry to let you know that he died. He died in his house. He was 85, and the police had to break down the door to get in. And they let me know that I had to get that door fixed because the house was open and anybody could go in there. So I had to do that, and then I had to arrange the funeral. And I wrote something for him for the funeral. It's not exactly a poem. It's just some words, poetic words. I could read that.
Oh, please share. Please do.
Okay. My dear cousin Victor, I wish you peace and tranquility. I wish you ongoing spiritual growth. I wish that you would look in on me occasionally and send your angel energy my way. Only now that you have moved on, do I mourn what might have been. Only now, in my later years, do I appreciate each person's value. Only now do I grieve for our family, who remained too separate from one another. You, me, Barbara, and Wayne, all only children, all lonely children. I hope that you found contentment in your life. I hope that you lived as you wished. I hope that you were at peace with life when you passed. I will remember you. May you be blessed.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. That is a very loving tribute.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Very lovely. And now, beautifully. It is poetic. It's very poetic.
It is very poetic. Marjorie, that's just wonderful.
Thank you.
Did I meet him at your bar mitzvah? I remember meeting, there was a boy and a girl cousin that I remember.
Barbara and David. They were on my mother's side of the family.
Okay.
My mother did not like my father's side of the family, so I'm not sure if he was there or not. I would bet that he wasn't. I barely got to know him at all.
Oh, but what a beautiful tribute to him. So there's a spirit connection to him. Your soul.
You took the words right out of my mouth. It's very spiritual.
Well, I was the only relative at the funeral. And in fact, there was just his next door neighbors were also there. And I wanted to honor him regardless of our relationship. Everyone deserves that. And
that's kind of you. And it's also spiritually mature.
Just beautiful.
So it looks like you have another career developing, Marjorie.
Well, I'm writing for myself. So a lot of what I write, I can't always share with the world, or I'm not ready to share it with the world, or they might not understand it. So,
Mhm.
but I don't know whether it's a career, but it nurtures my growth as a
Mhm.
person.
And I think that's important for us to all keep in mind, because even though we're older and we have lived more years than we probably have in front of us, um, we're still blossoming and growing and developing and exploring. And I think that's beautiful. I think we should pat ourselves on the back for that. Yeah.
I think so. That is. There was, you talk about how many years ahead of us. On the news last night, they had a report on Viola. I forget her last name. She's the oldest and one of the few survivors of the Tulsa massacre.
Mm.
And she's 107 years old. And she was so well spoken. Oh, she just won my heart. And so I think that if maybe we can't live another 70 years, but we can go half of that and be like Viola.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do that.
That's
I'm
the
making,
goal.
let's go for it.
Let's go.
Yeah. We had actually planned to have our 70th birthday parties together.
Right.
Right.
And then and then COVID,
Yes.
you know. So let's go for 75. That's a good marker.
It is.
We can
I agree.
celebrate that together. Yeah.
Or even 72. I think
Oh, okay.
I joined the community swimming pool just the other day. I thought, I'm going to go for it. I do an exercise that I haven't done since February of 2020. It's called I Chi. It's like a very gentle water Tai Chi. And it's a very mindful activity, and I need mindfulness. Anything I can do to incorporate mindfulness in my life and activities. And so I'm so excited that I'm going to go maybe every day, because the pool is only through maybe 5-6 blocks from my house. I'm going to ride my bicycle or walk to the pool, and I'm going to go in the corner and I'm going to do my I Chi. And I thought, and Bill said, Bill is my husband, and he said, is that safe? And I said, yes, I've determined that it's safe. So
It sounds like a wonderful exercise.
it is.
I've been dabbling with Tai Chi, and I found a wonderful instructor. In fact, I interviewed him, and he's going to be appearing in the next few weeks. His name is Greg Smith, and he teaches with the awareness and consciousness of seniors, of older people, and also with people who've had injuries, physical injuries. So it's a gentle discipline to begin with, and then with his level of mindfulness added to it, it's really, really quite enjoyable. So he's going to be on in a while.
Oh, I'll look forward to that.
Yeah. Okay, Marjorie, what are you doing to stay mindful besides your writing?
I wanted to comment that Tai Chi actually builds muscles, because there are two ways to build muscle. You can, lift weights and whatever, or you can use the weight of your body and you can elongate your muscles, and that also strengthens them. I've learned this from a program that I'm trying to do. It's called Eccentrics. She's coming on PBS if you get TV. She's been giving a class called Classical Stretch for years, which I never saw. I just discovered this a couple of months ago. But Eccentrics is where in my description, she combines Tai Chi with ballet. And since I used to study ballet,
I remember that.
I love the Eccentrics. And the problem is she does what she calls a Tai Chi plie, which is, you spread your legs and you bend down. And the problem is my knees can't handle it. And so that throws off the whole program.
Mm.
So I'm working on that. I hate to give up.
Don't give up. Adapt it to you.
That's what
And,
I'm trying to figure out.
well,
Yeah.
maybe not so much of a spread, but you'll get better. You know, make that your intention. I'm seeing you as an accomplished, what's it called? What's the program called
Oh,
again?
it's called eccentrics, like essential, but
Mhm.
eccentrics.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm seeing you as an accomplished eccentrics participant there, holding that vision.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. What else? What else? Are we all talked out already? Because we
Oh,
always
no,
talk for
no.
3 or 4 hours.
I didn't want I've made a change. My gift to myself for turning 70 was I wanted to reclaim my body. I wanted my body to be as healthy as I felt that my spirit was becoming. And I thought that my spirit deserved a healthier body than I had. And the first thing I needed to do was to take off a lot of extra pounds. And so I've been doing that. And for the first time in my life, I mean, I've lost weight lots of times in my life and gained it back, but I really believe that I'm mature enough and I care about my body enough that I'm not going to. And, but it's been really exciting. And so when Marjorie talks about Tai Chi strengthening your muscles, that's kind of where I am now. I've pretty much lost the weight that I wanted to lose. I've lost 45 pounds. So that was,
Ooh.
I could lose maybe a couple more pounds, but I really don't need to. But I have a lot of body now that needs to be toned up. And so maybe Tai Chi would be a good thing for me to do if it might help tone up my muscles. So I'm going to look into that.
Well, it will. And I think the fact that you're doing the I Chi in the water
Right.
is even more reinforcement, and it's
Right.
much easier on your joints. Maybe
It
that's
is.
something you could consider too, Marjorie, water-based exercises.
Just this morning, I was looking at the Montgomery County indoor pools, and they have lifted the really strict, you can't go inside, you have to wear your bathing suit to the pool, you can't go in the locker rooms except to use the bathroom and all kinds of stuff. So they've eased all of that, but they still encourage you to reserve your spot. So I'm going to look at reserving my spot so I can swim.
Can you reserve your spot with a guest or not? Or a guest not allowed yet? Because I would come down. It would be so fun. And Emma, if you wanted to join us too, if she could have 2 guests, it would be so fun to come down and to go
That's
into
a
the
thought.
pool and
Yeah.
to do that together.
You're right. You're right. Well, I have my condo association has an outdoor pool, and they were not going to allow guests this year, and now they are. It sounds like allowing guests. So
Well, let's look into that. It's
Yeah,
a
so
possibility. Yeah.
we will.
Yeah.
that would
Oh,
be
I
a
like
really
that.
fun thing to do for the 3 of us to get together.
Absolutely. I like that. I really do.
Great, great.
I've been making well, let me back up a little bit. I have 2 grandchildren, they're twins, and they're now 6 years old. But in the early days, when they first came back with their family, my daughter and her husband moved back to Maryland from out of state. They lived here with us, my husband and me. And so we were really tightly packed in. It was wonderful. The babies like to go for walks in the stroller, and there is a lake, man-made lake. It's really a part of the water system in Baltimore City, Lake Montebello. And I would take them for rides. And James was probably about 8 or 9 months old when he had a sense of place. And it's a mile and a quarter to make one rotation. And I would go around once, and I thought, I've got my workout for today. But he would know that we hadn't been around twice. And he
Oh,
would say his equivalent of more, like more, more. So I ended up walking 2.5 miles at least 3 times a week, if not
mhm,
more often, with the babies pushing the stroller. And you think infants are little, how hard could that be? There's just enough tilt on the pavement that you got to struggle to keep the carriage straight. Otherwise, you run into the curb.
mhm.
So that was additional, exercise for me. And I was in great shape from walking the babies, for a while. But now they're in their own home and they, moved on. So I'm going to go back and try that again. But so I'm inviting you ladies this way, so we can take a stroll around Lake Montebello when
Why
when
don't
you're in
we?
this
That
area.
would be wonderful. And then I will invite you to come here. So we could meet at Marjorie's pool. We could go walk around Lake Montebello, and you could come here, and we could either walk along the rail trails or
Oh,
we could walk
oh,
around. We just live 2.5 blocks from a small college campus. It's called Lebanon Valley College, and I love walking around the campus. So that could be fun too. And we could check out each other's turf.
yes.
That would be awesome.
That sounds wonderful. That's great. Okay, let's put it on the
Yes,
calendar. Got a
yes,
whole
we'll
summer.
we'll
Yeah.
do it. Okay. Who wants to take June? Where should we go in June? Emma,
I'd like
should we
to.
go to Lake Montebello in June?
We could do that. We can do
Okay.
Lake Montebello in June. Well, everybody check your calendars and we'll confirm. So we can
Okay.
say I've
Okay,
got June and
Okay.
I can do July, I guess.
And I'll do
okay,
August.
okay, there you go.
We'll try to
Sounds
make it work. One thing, can I jump way back to our high school graduation?
sure.
When we were talking before about how we just kind of left, two things happened. One of which was that we actually graduated on a national day of mourning for Robert Kennedy.
Mhm.
And so that kind of, I think, put a little bit of a damper on it, or maybe a lot of a damper for those of us who loved Bobby Kennedy. But also our class was so large, and our high school auditorium was not good. So we were graduating from Sudbrook Junior High,
Mhm.
and the school was not big enough. So we graduated in 3 shifts.
Mhm.
And so there weren't tickets. So I didn't get to go to your graduation. So I didn't see the two of you graduate. You no doubt graduated together.
Mm,
But
That's a
I
good
didn't.
point.
I mean, I graduated with Charlotte,
Oh,
but
okay. Yes.
but
Mhm.
but it was, I mean, the class was divided into 3. And so that graduation wasn't even a whole final class
Mhm.
event. And it was, and what it was a pretty sober event. And I think that maybe had we, because now they hold graduations in college field houses so that the classes can all be together. But we weren't together. So that was something that we kind of missed out on. And I think that might be one reason that we left without all the appropriate goodbyes. I don't know.
Could
So
be.
That's a very valid point. And honestly, all I really remember about graduation is that my grandmother came, and I was so excited to see her. She lived in West Virginia. We
mhm.
are originally from West Virginia, so she had made the trip, and she was my favorite person on the planet. And that's what I recall, that my grandmother was there. The rest of the family, but for me, the highlight was having my grandmother. I
Mhm.
don't recall who spoke. I barely, I barely remember the event.
Mhm.
Um, so, and I don't recall that we had an activity where in school where all of us as a class assembled together as a
No,
kind of a farewell. I don't know if we did or not.
nope, we didn't. Maybe the senior prom out. I mean, but that was outside of school.
Mhm.
But a lot of people don't go to senior proms. So
Yes.
So we know we
And
never really did. We never
and they're
did.
very cliquey. You go to the prom and you're with the people that you kind of grouped around, so you don't get that big,
Mhm.
you know, everybody's together, this is it moment. So
No. So I think that was something we missed out on. And I mean, that's unfortunate, but we've moved on.
yeah,
So
We have.
we've kept going. So Emma, where did you go to school? Where did you go to college?
I was in Illinois, like you
Mhm.
remembered. I went to Elmhurst College, which is 16 miles west of Chicago.
Mhm.
And it was a wonderful adventure. It really was. It was my first time away from home. Um, and this little tiny liberal arts school was very home-like in its atmosphere. They they were really they acted like parents in the absence of our parents, and so we had. And this is during 68, 70. Everything's changing. Society is really exploding with the rights and privileges of people to do any and everything that they can think of.
Mhm.
And yet in my college, we had check-in times. The dorms were still segregated by gender. Um,
Mhm.
the RAs were very attentive to who was in and who was out and where you were. So, for me, it was the perfect transition from having my parents know everything that I was doing to having strangers knowing everything I was doing. And eventually, I established my own independence, but it was a good transition period. The instructors were good. The classes were
Mhm.
small. Chicago was a heartbeat away if I wanted, quote, excitement. And of course, I, got to witness all kinds of good things, some questionable things, but I had a lot of fun. It was a
Mhm.
great experience. But I was ready to come home because the weather is brutal, absolutely brutal in Chicago. And, there's no joke about the wind coming off Lake Michigan.
Mhm.
I was ready to come back after 4 years.
Mhm.
And
Marjorie, where
Marjorie,
did you go?
yeah.
I went to the University of Maryland, College Park,
Mhm.
and I loved the big college experience.
Mhm.
There was so much cultural activity going on. Fellini films, things that
Mhm.
I had not been exposed to before. And it was wonderful being there. I really wanted to major in art, and perhaps it was a good thing. I don't know, but I majored in French because I just loved it so much that I had to keep taking it. And I thought art was too much fun. And you couldn't major in something that was fun. You had to major in
Yeah.
something that was hard and
Yeah.
Oh,
serious. And I don't know whether if I had majored in art, I would have felt the pressure of the grades and then it would have taken all the fun out of it,
Mhm.
or it just would have been wonderful. So I'll never know, but
We'll never know.
I walked by the art building going, oh, I wish I
mm,
were doing that. It's so
mm.
crazy. But as a kid, you do these things.
Mhm.
Now, I have a question though. Let me follow up on that. How did you use this French? How did this serve you in your life?
Well, let's see. I did some traveling because of it. When I was 19, I spent the summer in Quebec studying at Laval University. So I was studying French on a 7-week program. We studied from about 8 in the morning to about 1 in the afternoon, nonstop. And I was in absolute heaven doing that. Just
Mhm.
heaven. It was the first time I had been in a French speaking place. And then the following year, when I was 20, I went over to the south of France to Aix-en-Provence and spent a semester studying there. And that again was an amazing time. So I did that. Then my dream had been to be an interpreter at the United Nations.
Oh,
Does that sound familiar?
no, exactly. Yeah, because that's what I was going to do with Spanish and Portuguese. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so for that, I understood I needed to go to a school like Georgetown. So I spoke to them and they said, well, if you don't have one or two, like if you don't have it in your family as kind of a native language, it's going to be too hard because there are too many, people that speak English, but maybe dad was from France. And so they learned French.
Mhm.
So it seemed that that wasn't in the cards. However, I'm trying to think if I used it at any point. The only time I really used it in my work life was I had some temporary jobs at the World Bank. And they put me in as a secretary with the People's Republic of Libya, also Algeria, and some other African countries. And I was able to type in both French and English. So that's where that came in.
Mhm.
So it's still there. I have a whole playlist of French songs on my iTunes, and that's about it.
Have you thought about writing in French?
I really haven't, because the only time I was that fluent in it was when I was in France and I started thinking in French.
Mhm.
So maybe at that point I might have been able to, but not really at this point without a lot of study. And actually, I think at this point, the most important language that we could learn is Spanish.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. See, you made a great choice back in the day.
I just wanted to be in Mr. Pickett's classes.
Oh. Well, in high
Oh.
school, I had Mrs. Wimmer,
Mhm.
and she was fabulous because she introduced us to opera. We went through some French operas and they were just beautiful. And she also would have us learn through French pop songs. And so it was a wonderful class.
Mhm.
Do you remember many of your teachers from high school?
I do.
Who do you remember?
Well, and I remember my Spanish teacher was Carol Brown, and now she's Carol Valsic. She got married shortly after we graduated.
Okay.
She was Spanish, and I remember Mr. Weiss. Do you remember Mr. Weiss?
Oh,
Mhm.
yes.
Yes, I mean, he was our history teacher, and he was just creme de la creme. And one of my favorite memories of Mr. Weiss was back in the day, back when we were in school during National Education Week, parents really came to school to watch the classes. And even in high school, I mean, that just doesn't happen anymore. Probably not even allowed anymore. But back then they did. And so the day before parents were going to be coming, he said, now we're going to have this agreement. He says, I know you all want to look like you know everything, So when I ask a question or when something comes up, if you want to respond, raise your right hand. But if you don't want to respond, but you want to look involved, raise your left hand. And I promise I will not call on anyone who has raised his or her left hand.
Oh.
And so then the day it actually happened, there were only people with their left hand raised for something. And he said, well, no, before I call on you, let me rephrase. Let's go back, because I think let's focus on what we want. And we all realized what had happened, and we just idolized him. He was such a wonderful teacher that it was, I think that they were probably my two favorite teachers, but also my senior year. And who did you have for social studies, for civics? What did we call it, senior year? I had Mr. Watson. Did either of you have Mr. Watson?
I had Mr. Turk.
I had Mr. Turk also.
Mr. Turk, yes.
So did you have him in high school, Marjorie? Because I had him in junior high. He was our 9th grade.
Who, Mr. Turk?
Mr. Turk,
I did not have him. Only in senior year,
Oh,
I believe
so,
I had him, and he totally disapproved of me
Oh,
because he wrote a whole lot on the board.
oh, and
You-
his writing was tiny
His
and
right,
illegible.
yes, and I would have to get up out of my seat and go to the board in order to read it and to write it down or whatever. And I know that he just frowned upon that. It was like,
Yes.
but I had to do it.
No, good on
I
her.
mentioned Bob Turk, and for everyone who may not know, Bob Turk is a weatherman, a local TV weatherman in Baltimore. His dad was Mr. Turk, and
Yeah.
Bob was known as the Sunshine Kid when he first started
Yes.
his career. And now he is the age of older than his dad, I think, than when he was teaching us.
Oh,
So,
I'm
yeah.
sure. Yeah, Bob
Yeah.
Turk graduated in the class of 65. He was Milford Mill
Oh.
class of 65.
I didn't know that.
So we just missed, well, Marjorie and I just missed him. He wasn't on campus when we were. But let me tell you about Mr. Watson. Edwin Watson had a beard. He rode a motorcycle to school. He was Catholic, and we knew that. And he had 10 children. And he was the person who opened my heart and mind to civil rights movement. He was just, I hold him personally, what's the word? I mean, it's a good thing. He really, truly, from day one, he opened our minds to being all inclusive and to appreciating everyone for who they were, and to not being judgmental of people. And he taught us a lot about Martin Luther King, and he would, and the messages that Dr. King was presenting. And he was just, he was, and we know that that was important for us because other than M Assembly and Charlotte Johnson, we didn't have exposure to African-American people in our school. So,
or anywhere else.
Or anywhere else. Yeah. And so he totally connected me into that. And so much of what I remember from senior year was about Mr. Watson and Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King was assassinated at the beginning of our spring vacation. And so we didn't have school and for another, week and a half or 2 weeks, I forget. We used to have long spring vacations. But we got back to school and we were talking, and Mr. Watson cried, and he cried. He didn't apologize for crying. And he let us know that it was okay to cry when someone that you love that we have lost that person, and how important it was for us to remember the things that he taught, because that could, that was what we needed to do, was to remember all the messages of Martin Luther King and carry them with us in our heart and let them change who we were and how we saw the world. And that was when I also became a Bobby Kennedy fan, because Bobby Kennedy had joined the Democratic race for president, because remember, President Johnson had said that he would not accept he would not run, nor would he accept the nomination. So he was not going to run for another term because of how they had botched up Vietnam and all of that. So Bobby Kennedy was the day that Martin Luther King was killed. He was supposed to give, he was at a campaign rally at a fair in Ohio. But he spoke, but he didn't once mention the presidential campaign, and he just used it as a tribute to Martin Luther King and to wanting us as a people to take what we had learned and to move forward with it, and to get rid of the division. And I think about that. That was 1968. So we're now 50, how many years ago was that? 53 years ago. And, and we just haven't, in so many ways. I guess we've improved. We've made progress. But Emma, you know more than anybody how much progress we still have to make, how much we still need to do. But it was just, so Mr. Watson to me was absolutely life-changing for me. And it was, I mean, he was just wonderful. I feel sorry for anybody who didn't have the opportunity of having him for a teacher. So that is my teacher. That was a long description of Mr.
That was
Watson.
Well, it's a wonderful tribute to someone who really had a major impact on your life, because it seems that from that foundation, because you had a strong family, but he gave you something else to consider.
Totally.
And broadened your horizon. And for me, that's the interesting thing about race relations. You know, for a long time in this country, we've looked at the interactions as something that Black people had to work toward getting resolved, when in reality we can't do that, and we shouldn't do that. It's not our attitudes that are creating the issues and the problems. It's people who don't look like us who have created systems and structures that restrict and limit what people who look like me can do. So we're not in a position to create the solution, although we have plenty to say about it. And it's another reason people need to talk and tell their stories, because, you know, in telling the story, the truth is what actually sets all of us free. So
totally. I have learned so much from listening to your conversations. I mean, so many people who have, again, just broadened my soul with their ideas. I mean, Calvin, I want to go to dinner with Calvin and spend time with him, you know. I mean,
and you're referring to Calvin Alston,
yes,
who is an author of 3 books about his life in Baltimore. We did have quite a conversation.
Oh, just amazing. But it's so real. And we just have to get rid of anything that makes us not open to appreciating every individual soul. So,
well, people need to understand that the progress that each one of us makes does not impede anyone else. You know, your good fortune does not have to be my misfortune. You know, and everyone does have something to offer, and we all have a gift and a story. So if we can at least allow the space for that to take place, then things will improve worldwide, really. Kathy, you attended a conference, you said this morning.
Yes.
That you shared with us a quote before we started recording, and I just wanted you to share that with everyone.
Well, and I wish I could actually quote it, but I wrote down the idea so I can paraphrase it. The conference was on healing and hope. And it was this one woman said, and it was a woman's conference. So it was from a woman's perspective. But it didn't need to be from a woman's perspective. It's a person perspective. But the woman had said that when an infant is born, that we just recognize how precious that infant is, and we make a fuss over the infant, and we just love and cherish any moment, anything about that infant. And then she said, but what has that infant done to deserve, you know, our praise and our admiration and our love? Nothing. The infant cries and pees and poos and feeds and sleeps, and but we love them. And she said, isn't there the message that each one of us, we don't need to prove our worth. We don't need to buy the things that we do. We don't have to have this slate of good things. We intrinsically have great worth because we are, and that we need to appreciate that in ourselves and in other people. And we need to not be looking at ourselves and think, well, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I don't deserve to have good things. Each one of us is worth everything that little baby is worth. So I thought that's a really important idea.
It's a very important idea. And I think, Marjorie, you have expressed something similar as well in terms of your dealings with people. Um, I'm thinking about the young lady, Erin Wiley, who is the poet that you introduced me to. You know, that seems to be how you operate. That seems like that's your consciousness, your awareness of folks. Would you agree with that? Am I saying that correctly?
I've never thought about anything like that, but I will take it as a compliment. I'm not, I have made somewhat of a study of people in order to understand myself better. So perhaps that's where that comes in.
Well, you're very accepting and receptive. And I'm saying that from a personal standpoint because, you know, as the minority in a school that was explained to me at the time was about 85% Jewish and 99.9% white, you made me feel welcome. And there's, I must say, because in this country, color is such a marker, I'm often identified by my color before people get to see who I am. And they'll say, there's a Black woman, there's a, or depending on how far back you go in history, a colored child. You know, there's always some qualifier that comes before the child, the girl, the woman, the person. And in my dealings with you, because we were in homeroom together, I never got the impression that you were seeing me and had to get past my outward appearance. You just responded and related to me. And I fully appreciated that. And I will share this. Before I came to Milford, having lived in West Virginia, it was that my first year of high school, 10th grade, I will say was a hellish experience. Looking back on it, I know exactly what was happening now. There was a lot of racial discrimination. I didn't have the experience or the language to understand what was happening to me. And it was really created by the teachers. They were skillful enough not to say things that could be identified as racially insensitive, but it was all in the presentation. So, you know, attitudes speak a lot, and their attitude toward me was fairly negative. I couldn't relate to that and I couldn't understand it. I had attended a junior high school that was integrated. I had white teachers. I had a few Black teachers. Mostly they were white teachers. And none of them brought up none of them, I won't say, they didn't bring up our color. They treated us like students, like children, period. So I go into high school with the same set of expectations, but that's not how I was received. So when I say it was a hellish year, it really was. My father was transferred from West Virginia to Baltimore, and Milford for me was the personal answer to a prayer. I had literally prayed to God to save me from these awful experiences that I was having, and to just give me a chance. Because if I just get a chance, I'll be a much better person, whatever that meant. And there I was in high school in a homeroom and with you, Marjorie. And you made a difference. You made a huge difference. I was able to regain my confidence in who I was as a person. I didn't do a lot of talking because I wasn't so sure of what I thought all the time, but I could listen, and I was very sensitive to how I was being received. And the hostility, whether it was blatant or covert, that I had experienced in the previous school, that was not present at Milford. And you were a big part of that. And then having gone to the student council, Kathy, you know, you were the idea lady, and you would, you know, try things off with me. You say, well, what do you think about this? And what am I thinking? Really?
Well, you were a source of information. You were.
Well, I still have opinions on everything.
Yes,
That
of
has
course.
not changed.
But can I also say something about Marjorie? And I don't want to
Mhm.
I don't want you to feel, like on the spot. But so I moved just barely before seventh grade started to Baltimore. And so it was just the week before the school year started. And so I'm new as a 12-year-old in the school. And come to find out that there was only one other person in my homeroom class who was a Gentile. And it was like, what's a Gentile? I didn't know what a Gentile was. I mean, we lived in little Utah towns. We lived in a town for a number of years that was called Tropic. It was right by the northeast entrance to Bryce Canyon National Park, and there were 250 people. So we're talking some small towns. And I mean, and all of a sudden, there was one other Gentile in my class, and I was very much out of it, But and then Marjorie, there's a poem that said, "Love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in." But Marjorie included me in the circle of Judaism. She invited me to her bas mitzvah the following year. And that was the most, like, in my life, it was like, oh, wow, this is real, this is neat. And that somehow it was like, it's okay. You are not a Gentile, that you're not on the outside. You can be included in our circle. And it was such a wonderful experience. I mean, that's a lot of years ago, but I still remember so clearly sitting. I gave you, I'm sure, from Epstein's, a little bracelet. That was what I gave you for a bar mitzvah present. I used my babysitting money, I'm sure, and I bought it, but I thought it was pretty. But I remember sitting on your bed in your bedroom, and your two cousins were in there. And I remember the four of us talking and feeling like, this is okay. I can be, I'm not an outsider. I didn't like that word Gentile. I thought it was like, I felt alienated by it. And then all of a sudden I felt part of the circle.
Oh.
So anyway, so that was my Marjorie memory too. So.
Oh.
Well, Marjorie, you're just the glue that keeps everybody
I
together.
know.
Yeah, there was something in me that always wanted to make the outside person feel included.
Mm.
There were new kids at my school who were more self-assured, and they got around, and they didn't need support in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were people who were quieter or whatever, and something in me, because I knew the feeling of being excluded. I don't know how I knew it, but I think due to my shyness and everything, I don't think I ever felt that I really belonged anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I always wanted to do that. And I can't even explain. That's the best I can explain why.
But see, what a wonderful thing to do. So to look outside yourself, to include other people into yourself. I mean, that really is a gift that you have. So that's really wonderful.
It is a gift. And I just thank you. All these years later, here we are.
That's right.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're really you are the glue that keeps us together, Marjorie. Well, except for but Emma, I also wanted to tell you, you talked about junior high. Marjorie, I'm sure you had Mr. Thomas for science. Did you have Mr. Thomas?
I did have Mr. Thomas.
Emma, he was, I mean, you talk about the top 10 teachers I've ever experienced in my life. And Mr. Thomas may have been the first person that would have fit in that group. He was this very tall black man.
Right? That's how I remember him, as a good-looking
guy. And he was such a good teacher. He expected nothing but the best out of us. He gave us nothing but the best, and he had fun galore. No, he was that. I mean, it was so that we did have the opportunity of having Mr. Thomas as a science teacher.
And
And
what was the name of your junior high?
Sudbrook.
Oh,
Sudbrook
you was
Junior High.
Sudbrook. Okay.
Yeah. And Marjorie lived across the street from Sudbrook, and I lived on the next street. I lived.
Well, you know what? We were really close because I lived in Gwenvale, which was off of Greenwood and Old Court. So, and my sister actually attended Sudbrook. My only sister, she attended
Oh, really?
Sudbrook. Yeah, she was there. I don't know if it had become a middle school. I think it was still a junior high then too.
Yeah, because she's not that. You were 5 when she was born, right? When you wanted
Right.
your little brother.
Yes. I was almost 5. It's 4.5. Yeah.
So it would have still, because it was still, she would have known my brothers. I had a brother, Kevin, who was 4 years younger, a brother, Carl, who was 6 years younger, and brother Casey, who was 8 years younger. So she would have been at Sudbrook with them. So
okay, with 2 of them. Yeah, okay.
But Mr. Thomas was superb. He was absolutely superb.
Well, I think we have kind of concluded this session, this conversation. What do you think?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. I've enjoyed this, but we always have good conversations. We never know where they're going to go. So we're going to do this again. We won't be broadcasting the next one, but anyway.
Okay. June. Now my daughter's expecting a baby on June the 7th. So probably later June rather than early June would be good for me.
Okay.
It's her 4th. She's having her 4th.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Yes.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
How many grandchildren?
4. My son and his wife don't have any children. They're so that we will probably have 4, and they're fun.
They think they're dead. Okay. Well, we shall see what the future brings.
That's right. It's always good to spend time with both of you.
I quite agree.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emma, for doing this.
Well, thank you for agreeing. It's absolutely my pleasure.
And thank you, Mike.
My tech crew, otherwise known as Michael, is not available, but I'll pass the message along.
Okay, thanks.
Once he sets the dial, he goes on and does his thing. So. Okay, ladies, talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.